I know it can be hard. So Start at Meetup is a weekly meetup that we've been doing since January, first week of January, to kind of have knowledge transfer from people who have been doing interesting things or people who are trying interesting things. Because when you're trying to
And if anyone hasn't noticed, we have 3 Bobs in a row because Robert J. Moul.
almost all of them are on our YouTube channel, full length. So if anybody who wants to see you again, they can. And if anybody out there has any questions, you can tweet to Ben at Walnut Street Labs. What else?
Office hours,
Yeah.
incubator.
I was just thinking about Startup Meetup if there's anything else that we want
Oh,
to
okay.
talk about. Oh, we have Mike Lunamoser doing second camera, and he does a little vignette. So and we post that all over social media. In addition, we have another event Wednesday nights called Night Owls, which is not organized in rows and columns. It's come and hang out, drink beer or coffee or anything you want, and talk to people and network. So we've been doing that since January. We also do co-working here. For $300, you get a key, 24/7 access to do almost anything you want. And we have small teams, remote workers, entrepreneurs, and it's a good lively crowd. Close to lots of coffee and food. If you want to know about that, let us know. I believe we're expanding to upstairs January 1st, working on that. We have 2 conference rooms and a bocce ball court downstairs. So you can feel free to go down there and check it out. We also launched a new program recently called Walnut Street Labs Office Hours, where you can schedule time with some folks in this room, senior folks who can deliver intel or feedback on business development, product development, mobile, design. Check it out. We have about 20 people on there, and it's in conjunction with the CCEDC, I2N. So let me just give a shout out to our sponsors, and I'll turn it over to Bob. Fox Rothschild, Terry Hicks in the back, raise your hand. Terry Hicks. Terry Kerwin. You know what I'm doing. He has been here for a while, helping to keep us straight and narrow, and being great counsel to our vision. So we want to say thank you to them and the team there, from Michael Harrington, to Michael Harrington too, who's got a big focus and commitment to greater Westchester, Chester County. Gary Smith at the CCDC and Mary Fuchs have also supported us in many ways, including financially, to do this very thing and raise the profile of innovation in Chester County. Sean Dominski, Igniter TV, has been faithfully coming here and live streaming, so we want to give him a shout out too. And is there anybody I'm missing? Kevin? Michael? Ben?
You're doing good. I'll say, yeah.
Okay, so we also have an incubator, and if you want to know more about that, let me know. I want to turn it over to Bob. The format is content and then Q&A, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Roughly how much time?
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
And then we have
Cool. Well, good morning, everybody. I have to tell you, I do a lot of these things usually at night when I've had at least 1 or 2 beers, and this is a little unusual for me doing it in the morning with water, but I'm impressed with how much energy there was in the room. That's pretty impressive. So I bring you greetings from all of your brothers and sister entrepreneurs down in Philadelphia and around the region. I actually live out in Devon, so this is not such a commute for me. But I train into the city every day, and so I guess I'll start a little bit of like how I got to where I am and tell you kind of what I'm up to, and then I'm happy to sort of back up and fill in the story and tell you what we're doing with Artisan. I'd love to talk about the Philadelphia tech scene, but for me, I've been kind of drawn back into Philadelphia over and over again. It's kind of interesting. From my first time here was in the early 80s when I was with a little company called EDS. Does anybody even remember EDS, Ross Perot's company? Oh, we got a few. And we were here modernizing the Navy systems down at the Navy Yard. And I was actually here during the time, I don't know if you remember the Moul fire that occurred in the city, and there was a lot of turmoil going on in Philadelphia at the time. That was kind of my early experience with it. I went off and did other things with EDS, ended up traveling and living all around the world, which was fantastic. But ended up coming back to Philly to run a company locally called SCT, and I think there's a couple of SCT alums in the in the crowd, which was a higher education software business. And so that sort of brought me back to Philly again, and then I left again for a little while, and then Boomi ended up bringing me back. So I feel like I'm supposed to be in Philadelphia, and at this point, after 20 plus years of traveling all over the world, I'm done. The Philly's home. I'm all in on Philly. And there's an interesting thing I think that happens psychologically when you finally decide like some place is your home. You want it to be the best home it can be, right? When you're sort of just, passing through a town, it's like it is what it is. I've lived in a lot of cities. But the moment I was like all in on Philly, I guess my mindset really changed. And so the moment for me came when we sold Boomi to Dell about 3 years ago, and I'm happy to tell you that story. I started to look for my next gig and was, I tell this story often, I was actually very surprised at the time. Now this is three years ago, whatever, I think a lot's changed, but not a whole lot of activity. And I was baffled because, you look at this region and we have all the raw ingredients of any other, big startup town. We've got great universities. We got energetic and smart entrepreneurs with lots of great ideas. There is venture capital. But it just didn't seem to be sort of coalescing, the way I'd seen it in other places. And so I began a personal journey just because out of, I think, morbid curiosity and just a desire to want a more vibrant startup ecosystem here. I probably spent a year taking meetings with anybody who would take a meeting in coffee shops all over the city and in the region, whatever, just talking to people and just trying to really get a feel for, what were the challenges and what we could do. And we gradually sort of came up with a framework, not too unlike you would expect, and now there's been books written about it. I mean, you can read Brad Feld's book on how to build startup communities or whatever, but we focused on early stage seed capital. There was really a dearth of early stage seed capital. Not everybody needs to raise capital, and we can have the whole bootstrapping versus capital raise debate if we want to do that. But also affordable space, and you look at places like this that have now popped up. I mean, 3 years ago, we didn't have hardly any, and we now have Seed Philly, and we've got Venture Fourth, and we've got Benjamin's Desk, and they're popping up in the region as well. So that was important. Better integration with the universities. I didn't feel like we were doing a great job of really reaching the students. They were graduating and feeling like they had to move to New York or to Boston or the Valley in order to get opportunities. So we really worked hard on tightening that integration. And then worked with, I ended up becoming president of Philly Startup Leaders. I'm still the chair of Philly Startup Leaders. Worked with the city on a really cool project, worked with the mayor and his team to put together Startup PHL. So if you haven't heard of Startup PHL, it's a $6 million seed fund that we now have in the city of Philadelphia. Also a $500,000 idea fund. So we do routine calls for ideas. Any idea to help improve the startup community can get grants of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. And that's, I think we've been through 2 or 3 calls for ideas. A lot of people ask me, well, you live in the burbs, why are you, down in the city? And I'll tell you, my feeling was that in order to have a strong region, which I'm definitely, about the region, you have to have a strong city. You can't really sort of have this donut where there's good things going around and the core is kind of rotting and not growing. And so I felt like the best use of my personal time was to really get plugged into the city, try to really bolster the startup scene in the city, and then I thought the region would sort of grow as a result of that. So that's why I spent a lot of my time in the city. My next startup is in the city, down in Old City. So I take what used to be the R5, I don't know what they call it anymore, the Paoli-Thorndale line every day from Devon into the city and work in Old City and train it back every night. So that's how important I think it is. So that's a little bit of who I am and what I do. My journey, which I think was one of the things that I was asked to talk about. I didn't come to entrepreneurship, I don't think, if there is a standard way, I don't know what the standard way is, but certainly my story is kind of unique. Well, first of all, I will tell you that I think it was, 10th grade or 11th grade when I coded my first BASIC program. Does anybody know the BASIC programming language? All right, cool. By the way, for the techies in here, I kept up all the way through C. I taught myself C through the Kernighan and Ritchie book. I actually bought a little C compiler and had it running on my computer and wrote some code, but that was about it. When they start C#, C++, Objective-C, Rails, Ruby, I'm out. So I tried to keep up. But I fell in love, like writing a program and having the computer do what you told it to do. I was like, this is fantastic. And I like every minute I had available in school, I would go down. We had one computer, by the way. It wasn't a very big school. I think we had 400 kids in my high school, 90-something in my graduating class. We had one TRS-80. You remember the Radio Shack TRS-80? Yeah, the Trash 80, exactly. So every moment I could get on that thing, I was on it and whatever. And I worked the whole way through high school at a traditional, quintessential Ford dealership, pumping gas, changing tires, changing oil, whatever. And one of the guys that would come into the gas station worked at EDS. And over time, I kept hearing about Ross Perot and this great company and whatever. And by the time I was graduating high school, I knew I wanted to go work for EDS. And honestly, I hated school so much that I could not imagine 4 more years of college. So I didn't go to college. I never applied to college. I never took the SATs or the PSATs or whatever you do. I never had an interest in going. I just knew I wanted to go work for EDS. So I get the name and number of the recruiter. And at 17 years old, I go all the way to Camp Hill, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and interview with this recruiter. And he's a very nice guy, but he was trying to gently turn me down. And I'm not an easy guy to turn down once I got my mind set on something. So, I think the first thing was, well, I didn't know enough about the company, and he sent me away to do like a report on EDS because I didn't know enough. So I went away, and this was at a time when at my house anyway, we didn't have, not only we did not have a personal computer, we didn't have a typewriter. So I was literally doing these reports handwritten on tablet paper. I hand wrote this report, and then I went back up to Camp Hill. I met with Jim again. I said, here you go. Here's my report on EDS. And he was very impressed. And I think the next thing was, where else have you applied? I was like confused by this question. I'm like, what? Apply? What do you mean apply? I want to work here. Like, why would I apply anywhere else? He goes, no. We really think you should go try to get a job somewhere else. This is really baffling. So I said, okay, and I left. And I went, I called like 20 companies. Nobody would even take an interview, right? 17, no college education. So I wrote that all up too on my nice handwriting and tablet paper. I went back to Jim. I said, Jim, here's all the companies I called. Nobody will even take a meeting with me. And so he was impressed with that. And then he gave me a tour. And I thought, I'm in, right? They're showing me the data center, and they're giving me this tour. I've got the job. And at the end, he sits me down. He says, Bob, we're all really impressed with you, but you're just too young. You're not ready to make the commitment you're not ready to make this commitment to EDS. I was obviously very crestfallen, but I said to Jim, would you mind if I just checked in every once in a while just to see how things are going? And this really ended up being the strategy of my whole career, because I got patted on the head. He's like, Bob, knock yourself out. Call me anytime you want. So I go back to the garage, and I called Jim every Friday for 3 months. So, hey, Jim, it's Bob, just checking in. How's it going? Yeah, good, all right. And in the meantime, my dad is just like going crazy. He's like, you got to get out, you got to get a job, like a real job. Go get a real job. And he sort of forced me into going, and we lived in a very sort of blue collar part of Pennsylvania, and so I was applying at like, I don't know, garages and, manufacturing plants and whatever. Nothing against it, just wasn't what I wanted to do personally. I'll never forget, one night I get a call from, apparently I had interviewed with a vacuum cleaner company as a salesperson, and I get this call and he said, Bob, congratulations, we think you have what it takes to sell vacuum cleaners, we're ready to have you start tomorrow. I was like, oh boy, what a dilemma now. Do I take this job? Do I not take this job? My dad wants me to take this job. So ultimately, I turned him down. It was the biggest decision of my little 17-year-old long, life at that point. I was like, I'm not going to go sell vacuum cleaners. And the very next day, Jim Lewis called from EDS and said, Bob, I have a job for you. And immediately says, it's not really part of the company. I don't want you to think you're even getting your foot in the door. He said, but if you want, we need a courier. We need somebody to, we have 3 buildings, in Camp Hill. We need somebody to run the mail and the computer printouts and whatever around the campus every hour. I said, I'll take it. I'm there. And I'm telling you, I could hardly sleep the night before because I was like, do you think the van will have a logo on the side of it? I was so excited. By the way, the van did not have a logo on the side of it. It was a pretty beat up old van. But that's, I started in the mailroom, and every opportunity I had, I was there 2 weeks when the guy that I had replaced resigned. He had gotten moved up to the next, to running printers. And he resigned. I marched right into my manager's office and said, hey, Al, I saw Daryl, resigned. He's left you in a real bind. I'm ready to take his job. I'll never forget Al, who later ended up working for me, says, Mal, how long have you been here? I said, 2 weeks, sir. He said, get out of my office. But, I stayed with it, and over the course of 19 years, worked my way from the mailroom to one of the top executives in the company. I ran all the operations in Hong Kong and China for 2 years out of Hong Kong. I ran all the federal government business out of Australia. I was in England for a while. I ran my first project at the age of 20. This is another great story. Albany, Georgia. It was a project with the Marine Corps. We were modernizing some of their systems, and nobody would go, because it was Albany, Georgia. Have you ever been to, Atlanta is Atlanta, but Albany is, the state bird down there is the mosquito. It's not a place you want to be. Again, I was at the time, I think I was a DBA or some database administrator. And I walked into my manager's office and said, hey, I heard you're looking for a manager down in Albany. He goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm volunteering. He goes, Mal, how many projects have you ever managed? I said, none, sir. He said, out of my office. But sure enough, 2-3 weeks later, he calls me back in, and he's like, I can't get anybody to move to Albany. Are you still interested in going? I said, yes, sir. And went off to Albany, moved my family, my young family. We had just had a baby. In fact, the baby was a preemie. We were on the plane with the, I don't know if you've ever had a premature baby. You have to put the monitor on and make sure that they don't, whatever. We're flying on the plane to a place we've never been before with a brand new baby with the monitor on. My wife is looking at me like, what are we doing, right? Anyway, it was a great project. We ended up figuring out how to do it in half the time. We submitted what's called a value engineering change proposal. We saved the Marine Corps $2 million. We got to share in half of that. So my first time out of the gate, I made $1 million for the company at the age of 20, never having managed a project before. So that, to me, is kind of a little bit about what entrepreneurship was about. Now, I grew up in, like I said, in a small place. Entrepreneur wasn't even in the dictionary. Right? It was not in the lexicon. It was never in any discussions about future, job path. And I often tell the story in such a way that I kind of feel like I failed out of corporate America, because to me, and no offense to the people that work there, but it just kept getting, as the company grew from 8,000 employees to 140,000 employees, it got very political, it got very territorial, we got very inwardly focused. We were no longer focused on new stuff for customers and delivering things. And I just, one day, just couldn't get out of bed anymore. And to me, that's the measure. If I'm not jumping out of bed to go to work in the morning, something's wrong. And so after 19 years and crafting this story about how I was going to go from the mailroom to become CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I had to let that story go. And that was one of the hardest things for me to do. Because I wasn't really going to be able to embrace the next chapter until I could like put that behind me. And it was a big decision, very emotional decision. And I went through, at that point, I often talk about a very awkward transition into becoming an entrepreneur, which again, I to this day have a hard time calling myself an entrepreneur. It's kind of weird. Like, I'm always like, okay, somebody's going to figure you out, and right? And they're going to be like, he's not really an entrepreneur. But I keep looking it up in the dictionary to see if I like meet the criteria. I'm like, okay, I'm taking risk. I'm bringing new things to market. I took financial risk. Okay, what's that?
Are you an imposter?
I think I might be an imposter, but I'm a very good one. So there I am. I'm making this transition, and my first attempt at it. And by the way, I'm going to be giving a talk in a couple weeks to anybody know about GPSEG, the Senior Entrepreneur or Senior Executive Group at the Ambler campus. I'm doing this talk on second career entrepreneurship and how do you make this transition later in your career. For me, it was very, very awkward. I started this little LLC I called VentureWorks, which I thought was very clever, WERKS. I had my little logo, my cards, and my thought was, well, everybody's going to want all this worldly experience that I've had running big company, and I've managed 1,100 employees, and no, that wasn't really the case. I started meeting with some VCs to get some advice on how to whatever, and then I'll never forget the one guy was like, I handed him my card, and he just tossed it back to me, and he's like, "You're embarrassing yourself. Tear up the cards and throw them away." I was like, whoa. Okay. So my first attempt was a biometrics startup. I knew a bunch of guys at EDS that were in the biometrics area. We were going to do a mass resignation from the company, start our own company, and go out and build a platform, et cetera, et cetera. We were meeting around my kitchen table at home. I went to Staples and bought the flip chart, with the markers, and I was like, oh, this is cool, right? I shot that one about a month later. Like, there was just no way that was ever going to be a big play. I just thought the market wasn't there and whatever. That was, so failure right out of the gate if you want. But, on the other hand, learning a lot. In the meantime, I had taken another corporate job. And if I had needed one more experience to tell me that was really not where I wanted to be, that was it. And sometimes it takes that. Like, the universe, I think, is generally pretty good about presenting you over and over again, and if you're not listening, it'll just keep serving up, humble pie over and over again. So I did this thing. I had a big job. I was a group president. I had multiple division presidents reporting to me, big package, compensation package, whatever. Again, I could not get out of bed in the morning. So this Boomi thing comes along. I knew the angel investor at Boomi, and he kept calling me for like a year. He's like, Bob, you should come see this company, Boomi. And I kept saying, Mike, I'm busy. I got this job, in DC, and whatever. No, you really ought to. So finally, I agreed to join the board in December of 2005, and got to know the company, got to know the founder, Rick Nucci, who I think, Rick's spoken here? Yeah, awesome guy. So I don't want to sort of repeat a whole bunch of the Boomi story, but I'll give you my, what I experienced. So came in and did a consulting gig with them and really helped them redo the business strategy and the go-to-market, and we came up with a really cool idea to take what we had done and take it to the cloud. We thought, we had a hit. We went out to try to get it funded. I'm like, how hard can this be? You put a deck together, you go out and present, people write you checks. Not so much. We pitched Boomi the first time around for probably 2 months. Everyone told us no. I'll tell you, I guess we're on film here, but what the heck, we're all friends. My experience in Philly was brutal because Boomi already had a reputation. It was a small company. It was growing very slowly. So not only was I being told no when I was out trying to raise money, I was being ridiculed in the process, adding insult to injury. Like, why in the world would you want to take this on? And God, it's a dog with fleas and, whatever. But another part of my aspect of me is the more you tell me something can't be done, I'm all over it. This is going to happen now. Got to prove everybody wrong. And so we did a pretty amazing thing, and in hindsight, a very dangerous thing, which was we took all of our resources off the old product and went and built the new product without telling anybody, without telling customers what we were doing. We just decided to do it. And it took us about a year. and we ran out of money. And I took a second mortgage on my house to cover payroll. I wrote probably close to $250,000 worth of checks to cover payroll. And I'm lying in bed one night staring at the ceiling with insomnia, and it's pitch black. And my wife in the darkness says, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I said, "Nope, but we're going to figure it out. You know, like one step at a time, we're going to figure it out." And we did. We built it. We brought it to market. Within 3 years, we signed 500 customers on the platform. Ended up raising $8 million in total, and we sold it to Dell about 3 years ago for an amazing multiple on the company. It's never been publicly disclosed, but it was a very, very nice exit. Boomi has doubled in size every year it's been at Dell, so it's continued to be a great success story. We've created hundreds of jobs in that company, which is something I'm very proud of. It's in Berwyn. And that was when I then began I stayed a year at Dell. By the way, fun part of the story was when Michael called from China. He was actually in Shanghai, I think, in a taxi. And we had this appointed time, so Rick and I are at my house waiting for the phone call, and the phone call comes in, and it's Michael Dell. And he's like, "Bob, Rick," he goes, "I want to buy your company." You know, like, that, I can't describe like what that moment's like when you get that phone call, but it was phenomenal. Now, unfortunately, the call dropped because he's in a taxi in Shanghai. Amazingly, he called back twice. Like each time it dropped, I'm like, okay, well that's the last we're going to hear from Michael Dell, and the phone would ring, and he was back. He goes, "Sorry about that, guys." You know, so anyway, that's a pretty fun part of the story. Stayed at Dell for a year, helped with the transition, made sure that went well, and the whole time I'm just like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And loved cloud, but I thought mobile was just like cloud on steroids. Mobile's just changing everything, and so I knew I wanted to get into that space. Met up with Scott Wasserman, my co-founder. He was running a little company called App Renaissance. My theory was if I went to a company that was building mobile apps, they would know where all the pain points were in building apps. They'd know where all the white space opportunities are for building product. And so I joined a company that was building apps. And then within a year, and is Michael here today? Michael Raber? He's a big part of this. Yeah, he's a big part of the story. We came up with this concept. We call it mobile experience management, but it's all the stuff you've been able to do with websites forever. So, you know, all the analytics, A/B testing, different designs, personalization, right? When two of us go to the same website, we get two different experiences. We can do all that now for native mobile apps. But the engine of that was something that Michael actually created when he was at Dream Adventures. And it was the 1 year that I volunteered to be a mentor at Dream Adventures, and I was teamed up with Michael. And his first thing was a company called Feedback Trail. So it was about in-app feedback in mobile apps, which I thought was cool, but I just never thought it would be a big company. I thought it would probably be a feature in some other thing. And so I remember telling Michael that, and you know, if you know Michael, he's also a very determined sort, kind of went away. He calls a couple weeks later, he's like, "Bob, I got a better idea." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I come back and we get in the conference room on the whiteboard, and he draws on the board what eventually is now the core of Artisan. I tried to help him get it funded, worked with him, I gave him space to sit at down at my place in Old City. Ultimately, we loved so much what he was doing that we made an offer to do an acqui-hire. So we bought Michael and his technology and brought it into Artisan. And again, that became sort of the core of what is now the Artisan platform. Michael stayed for a couple of years. When it got sort of more into maintenance mode, I mean, Michael, again, he's a very creative guy. So I think this is, to me, the beginnings of really seeing an ecosystem at work. Michael's off doing his next thing. You know, I went off and did Artisan. Rick Nucci went off and did Guru. You know, that's just very, very exciting to me. So anyway, that's a little bit of my journey, how I got to here. I think I said I would try to talk about maybe some of my lessons learned along the way. And there are a number of them, but I would say the biggest one for me, and particularly right now, I think, is people get so passionate about their ideas, which is the strength, but it's also sometimes like the weakness. And one thing that I have learned is that the first thing you've got to prove with whatever it is you're doing is that, does anybody care? does anybody actually even care? Like we get so wound up in like go-to-market models and pricing strategies and channel strategies and whatever. But if nobody actually cares about what it is you're doing, then a lot of that stuff really doesn't matter. And that's been hard. Like certainly with Boomi, we didn't listen to anybody. So you could argue that you can argue that the opposite way can work. But generally speaking, I think you've got to figure out a way to prove pretty quickly that people actually care about what it is you're building. I've had a lot of discussions, deep discussions about raising money. And it's kind of interesting. I get a lot of people that come to me, a lot of entrepreneurs. By the way, I take, it's not braggadocious, but I take 3 to 5 meetings probably every week from entrepreneurs looking for help. I don't do advisory boards. I don't make a big deal out of it. I don't do O hours. But I tell people I need to eat, breakfast, lunch, and usually grab a beer after work. So if you want to meet during those times, I'll meet with people. And they'll say to me, I'm just really toiling over whether I should raise money or not. These are first-time entrepreneurs. And I try to be gentle and I say, it's not really whether you want to or not. I think the question is, A, do you need to or not? And B, could you if you needed to? Those are kind of the more salient questions. My views have modified a little bit. I think I've now learned when I meet with an entrepreneur to start by asking what are their goals? What's the goal of the entrepreneur? Because I think the answer needs to be in that context. There's no one-size-fits-all answer for every enterprise and every founder in every situation. And so I get really passionate when I see bad advice being dispensed, when I see people, reading books that proclaim one way to do it. If anything I've learned, every situation's different. So I always start with what's your goal? If your goal is, I want to build a 10-man consulting practice and be in a position where we select only the projects that we want. I say that's fantastic, and let's talk about the right path to get you there. If you think you have landed on the 1% of the 1%, which is the high growth, high potential, knock it out of the park, opportunity, you should take a look at potentially raising money. But you've got to, it's a big uphill battle, particularly if you're a first-time entrepreneur. The advice I give over and over and over again is, if your story is, hey, write me a check for $500,000 or $1 million or whatever, and I'll go away and build this thing, and you'll really be impressed with it when I bring it back, that's not going to generally get funded. If your story is, I have slaved on this thing for 2 years of my own time, and I've built it up, and I now have a following, and I'm getting signups that look like this, and I've been able to get paying customers that look like this, and now I'm constrained by the lack of capital, my growth. That's a story that people are going to be interested in hearing more about, and so that's a hard lesson. Too many people, in my view, rush immediately to, hey, I got a great idea, I need to go raise seed round so we can really go after this. So anyway, so this just a little bit. I could go on. The way I learn everything in life is I do by failure. Try it and make mistakes and fail and learn. And I'm always happy to share that with folks.
Well, you want to jump into Q&A?
Yeah, let's do that.
I'll come out. Ground rules. Introduce yourself, name, and what you do.
My name is Jim Breslin, local writer. I watched the video today about artists, so I'd love to hear more about the target audience for that, how many subs you have, the state of that right now. It
Yeah.
looks like an interesting app.
It is. It's a platform for app builders and brands, mainly brands. We have customers like AOL, we're in the NapQuest app, CVS, we're in the main app at CVS, A&E. For retailers, we're helping them optimize click-through rate. So again, all the stuff you've sort of been able to do on websites. Roulala is one of our customers. So they A/B test, and by the way, anybody use the Roo app? Flash sale, come on, you do. Sorry. Well, my job is actually to help you spend more money when you're in the app. So they do A/B testing on different messages, calls to action, designs, whatever, to try to improve click-through rate. Every 1% improvement is money, and we've gotten them 20, 30, 40% improvement in click-through rate in the app, which is a real return. For media companies like A&E, it's how long can I keep you in the app, because the longer I keep you in the app, the more ads I can serve, the more money I make. So we're literally doing trade-off analysis on how many people exit out after a 10-second ad, a 20-second ad, a 30-second ad, looking at that, that distribution. So it's we do analytics, A/B testing, and marketing automation. So we also now do push notifications, in-app messaging, all on one platform, all with one SDK. And yeah, that's what we're up to.
I don't know if I'm getting old, but I feel like I don't see a lot of that news coming out. I mean, that's kind of amazing that you can do all that. Is Google Analytics like giving that functionality away? Is that a competitor?
Google on the analytics side is definitely a competitor. Flurry is a competitor, but like with Flurry, if you're using, you don't own your data; they own your data. With us, you own your own data. But we've kind of gone, and all of this stuff. One of the advantages of coming along a little bit later than some of these guys is you can leap ahead in the, so I call it Analytics 2.0. You drop us into your app, you don't have to do any instrumentation. I don't know how many techies are in here. If you're using Flurry, if you're using Google Analytics, you literally have to go in and tag every field that you want to track. You want to run a query, you have to go in and inject code, say I want to capture this. With Artisan, it's auto-instrumented from day one. We collect every event, every user from moment one. That's a great example.
Do you guys do demos? Can we get you out here?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, Ben?
Yeah, we'd love to do a demo. We have like a Night Owls Hangout, which Chris spoke about, but we do demos.
I'm not certified on the demo, so I'll have to send one of the other guys.
That's fine, yeah.
All right, sorry. Anybody
Do you do custom?
introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jen Moyer-Smith.
Jen.
From?
QVC. And then I have other things. Does your app also can you build the app through your company?
No.
Okay.
And that was a big design consideration early on. We really didn't want people to have to build on our platform to use the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So we work with native iOS, native Android, and HTML5 hybrid apps that exist. Now, once you're in there, could you add a lot of stuff? Yes, but you can't build the app from scratch.
Jesse Pearsall, Special Events Coordinator here at the lab, amongst other things, but you talk a lot, and I'm familiar with your story, and a lot of it involves just showing up. Keep showing up. Is there a time when you are going down a path, and you keep showing up, and you keep being told no, that you should stop showing up?
That was my first marriage, I think. Lasted 20 years. It was good.
That's on my video. I did that for you.
That is, I think, the $64,000 question for every entrepreneur. And nothing makes me sadder than when I'm meeting with somebody and it's now 2 years into the same story and they still don't have any more traction and they're still really, and I just had one of those the other night. And the best, you can say what you want about the Lean Startup. If you haven't read it, I think it's a good book. It gets praise, it gets controversy, whatever. But I think one of the best things out of that book was how to set up in advance objective measures so that it makes it easier to make that pivot or get out decision. Because to me, it's the old frog in boiling water. I know there's a much maligned analogy, but if you put a frog in water and gradually turn up the heat, it'll boil, it won't jump out. You drop it into boiling water, it jumps out, right? And I think too many people are in that scenario where the heat just keeps turning up, they don't realize they're boiling. So you need to set up some objective measures ahead of it. No matter what it is, we're gonna do an email campaign. Great. How many responses? What do you think your response rate is going to be or should be? That's the best advice I've been able to come up with because it is absolutely the hallmark of some of the best entrepreneurs and inventors that they just won't hear no and they just keep going. And unfortunately, there's enough situations where they went that one extra step and boom, got success that leads all of us to think we can do that as well.
Amy Anderson, Anderson Productivity Solutions. I'm a CFO, Chief Financial Officer for Hire for small and medium-sized businesses. I appreciate your candidacy about how you failed and didn't fail. When did you feel that you were on that success? What was it in your mindset, in your businesses that you felt, I've actually made it?
I still don't think I've made it. I'm telling you, I'm an imposter up here. But I can tell you, like Boomi, I can tell you when I was convinced we had success there. And that was when we started making the first calls partners. So a lot of SaaS companies out there had SaaS apps that they were building and putting in the cloud. Salesforce, NetSuite, you name it. They had no way to integrate with any of the old systems that were still running on-premise. It was the number one sales objection that they had every time they were trying to sell a prospect. The prospect would say, hey, I love your app, but how does it talk to any of my old stuff? We came along, and in one call, I would do the deck, Rick would do the demo, and the partners would want to sign by the end of the phone call. That was when I said, okay, we've got something here. Like, we were closing partnership deals with one phone call remotely. We ended up signing 75 customers, or partners, by the way, with the 500 customers.
I'm Andrew Schwab. I'm a tech entrepreneur and also an advisor to the lab. So my question for you, albeit maybe a tough one, is what do you feel is the one personal blind spot that you had in your career that somebody finally shined light on and it made a significant difference for you in your career?
Blind spot. I don't know. And not that I don't have blind spots, I'm just trying to give you a good candid answer. I think, to me, it was the blind spots I had working in corporate where I thought I was the problem. And, listen, if you're there and you always think you're the smartest guy in the room, that's probably a sign. If there's no team and I, that's probably a sign. Like, if you abhor working group meetings and collaborative, I guess that was my blind spot. I could not. It just drove me nuts. The amount of time that was wasted in those kinds of meetings and whatever. And I think it was coming to grips with, again, that story of maybe this isn't me. Like, the skill set to become a Fortune 50 CEO is much more about political and the ability to influence and whatever. I already know the right answer, and I'm exhausted trying to influence the rest of you to get to where I am, right? So that was my blind spot, I guess. And I moved to where that is a strength.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm a local aspiring entrepreneur. Your comment about having to take a second mortgage out on your house, that's like a really scary situation. Was that before or after with Boomi that you realized that you had a good idea?
It was before.
So in that situation, I hope to never have to get to that. But at the same time, I want to know that, that the idea or whatever I'm working on at the time is justified, in doing something so radical. So what, if you don't mind kind of highlighting, what was going through your mind at that point from a confidence interval?
Well, the confidence came from, we hadn't yet had those calls that I was mentioning, but the confidence came from, Rick had already been in the integration world for 5 years, knew it cold. We saw the problem, so we saw that the problem was legitimately there. We felt like it was probably more of an execution risk than anything. Would we be the guys to be able to get there fast enough and stake the territory and get the market share? If I had to do it over again, I would spend more time doing, and again, this is a double-edged sword because a lot of times people don't know they need it, right, until you show it to them or whatever. But I would have gotten a lot more input on, this is what we're building, this is how it's going to work, what do you think? And I think we did one CIO roundtable with 10.
Micro experiment kind of thing?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And instead,
Sure.
we put like full frontal attack for a year. The reality is, had that not worked, I'd probably be in a state penitentiary somewhere. Yep.
Yes, I'm Mike Upman, I'm the director of the labs. Earlier in your talk, you talked a little bit about the Philadelphia community, the business community, venture community, and your experiences in it, and obviously also as an entrepreneur within it. Where do you think it's going? What do you think is going to happen over the next 5 years? And what do we need to do in the community to make it better?
I appreciate that question. I really do. It's huge. So the first thing I always tell people is this is a multi-decade effort. Anybody who thinks we're going to, do a couple of co-working spaces, and in 2 years everything is going to be whatever. This is a multi-decade journey. But if you look at the progress we've made just in the last 3, 4, 5 years, I'm blown away. Like, this blows me away. There's pockets of innovation and entrepreneurship popping up all over the region. Like you guys out here in Westchester, I was saying earlier, there's now a meetup group for Valley Forge has a meetup group. The stuff that's going on even in Delaware, New Jersey, I think it's awesome. And what do we need? I get a little bit high energy around this, but like there are a lot of groups out there to support entrepreneurs, which I love. I serve on the board of Ben Franklin. I serve on the board of PACT, etc. But there are very few groups that are the entrepreneurs. What we need are successful companies. What we need are people, whether it's bootstrapped, I don't care. We need companies that are successful, grow and build, and you guys are training the next generation of entrepreneurs that then go out and they start companies. It's a flywheel effect. And that flywheel has just finally started to get going in Philadelphia. I think we're incredibly underrated across the country. I just get so wound up when these articles are run about St. Louis or Cincinnati or whatever, no offense to them. But we have every bit as much going on here in Philadelphia. But, so patience, I think it's got to be a long-term view. And ultimately, we just need you guys, frankly, to succeed.
We have about 5 minutes. I'd like to just say one thing before I turn over to Ben to ask this question. I remember when Rick Newton was here, he said that he had an anecdote that in his 5th year at Boomi, people would come up before it was successful. People would see him and they'd say, still working at Boomi? And he'd say, yep. And there's a little bit of like, almost placed embarrassment, like, how dare you work in this economy on something for 5 years? You must be a loser. Right, but there's brilliance in knowing and sticking in for the long haul. I think there's a perception in the media that startups start on you crank out. Do you have commentary on that?
Yeah, well, again, it's another one that gets my energy up pretty quickly. I totally agree. What I love about East Coast in general, whether it's us or the guys up in New York, Brooklyn, DC, Boston, is in general, I think we build stuff that matters. In general, I think we build stuff that is changing the way business gets done or whatever. I feel like California, a little frothy. I personally am not really interested in building the next Instagram or Snapchat or whatever that has zero revenue and a $6 trillion valuation. I think that's insane. I think what we build here matters. I think we build solid businesses that actually have revenue, that eventually do turn profitable, that create jobs, that solve real. Like, I'm proud of the fact that Boomi solved one of the top 3 cloud computing problems, and it was done right here in Philadelphia. I'm proud of companies like RJ Metrics, which raised a $16 million B round. Analytics in the cloud. I'm proud of Curly and what they're doing. I'm proud of you guys or whatever the heck you're doing here. But I mean, you're trying, right? And again, not to, if somebody thinks they've got the next Instagram, I think that's fantastic. But in general, I think West Coast tends to be frothy, bubbly, particularly in valuation. I think East Coast, we're all about the business of, building things that matter.
Awesome. Okay.
So we're on the same wavelength, Chris and I are. Rick spoke about, he had a little presentation. His images were really helpful to proving his point. And when Boomi came up, and being founders, there was a picture of 2 rams, butting heads. And I just wanted you to maybe speak to that. What was a point within?
Was that him and me?
I mean, potentially. He didn't call you out or anything. I figured there are points in friction, like in any.
I think you know somebody.
I figured there are points in friction, regardless of how tight you guys have always been.
So I can tell you, first of all, Rick is the salt of the earth. I would do anything for Rick, anytime, any place, anywhere, and that's a very short list of people. He's on it. We had a great relationship, and in 5 years of ups and downs and heartache and whatever, I remember one time when we definitely locked horns. It was before we even built the product. I had gone to Rick and I said, hey, this whole SaaS thing, this whole cloud computing thing, do you think we ought to be taking a look at that? And he lit up. He goes, oh my God, I can't believe you asked me that. I have this presentation of this concept I've been working on, whatever. And so in that phase where we were just sort of blue skying it and working it out. I had this process that, just who is the way I work, where we would sort of build it all up, and then I would tear it all back down again. And then we'd build it back up, and then I would tear it all back down. Well, that's not going to work. That assumption. And I'll never forget, I don't know, on the 5th time of me tearing it down, he's like, "Do you believe in what we're doing or not?" He was like very, very passionate and emotional about it. And I was like, "Yeah, dude, totally." But by the way, one of my favorite lines: every battle is fought and won before you even. I truly believe that. So for those of you who think you don't need to do business plans, you think that's passé, do it for yourself. Write the business plan for yourself. We thought through at Boomi. We thought through every move, all the way through the products that we were going to release after the first product, our competitive responses. We anticipated those. We executed that plan. Maybe 5 degrees to the left or the right or whatever, but we executed that plan for 5 years.
All right,
No, we have time.
yeah, one more.
2 minutes.
What deliberate leadership strategies or just tools do you have to inspire people? Something deliberate that you've accumulated along the way that you said, this is something that works when I'm trying to reach out to someone or inspire someone as a leader.
Well, for my own teams, one thing I've learned, and I was even doing it at SCT, frankly, was I absolutely believe in getting athletes on board. And what do I mean by athletes? Athletes are people that can wear 3, 4, 5 different hats. If they don't know something, they'll go home and read a book, and the next day they come in and they've got that. You got to have that. You can't. You're just too small to have people say, "Well, I only do this or I only do that or whatever." I look for athletes, smart. Mentality, though, is the other key thing. You can get smart people, but if they're arrogant and hard to work with, you're just going to drag your culture down. You can put up with maybe a little bit of that, but I think culture is huge in startup. I just bought a book for the entire group. If you haven't read it, The Boys in the Boat, which is about the 1930-something rowing team that won the gold medal in the Olympics in Germany. Read that book, because that, I think, really, to me, sort of talks to when you're really clicking as a team, what that feels like and what it looks like. That's the kind of teams I try to build.
Okay, great thing to end on. So I appreciate you.